Okay, this is part 3 of the Flickr browser app, video 1. So what we're doing is we're adding a new graphical user interface using material design. We're going to add search capabilities so that we can search within the graphical user interface. We're going to be using app compat, the library, to retain compatibility with older versions of Android while still using a lot of the cool new features of material design. And last but not least, we're going to be adding a photos detail screen so that we can sort of see a large version of the photo that's currently in the recycler view, in sort of the list view. And we can see other details such as tags, etc. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is color. So I'm going to go to my browser. And we've seen this in a previous video. So if you haven't seen that material design video, certainly go back and watch that. It's in this section. And basically we're going to try and implement colors like you see on the screen here. And there are certain rules and there's certain different colors that Android Lollipop think work well together, and we're going to be using those. And we did talk about the 500s and the 700s and so on, the different shades and where they suggest they should be. So just scrolling down a little bit here, I'll show you what I mean. Because the main thing we're going to be looking at is things like this. We're using different shades. It's an accent. A little bit of pink there is an accent. This is like a primary text color. Those types of things we're going to be using what Google suggests is a good way of implementing these colors in a certain series, so in a certain fashion. So make sure that you have had a look at this, because we are trying to design things that look very much like this. In actual fact, we'll be designing a toolbar which will look very much similar to that. So keep that in mind. Make sure you do check out that document. So in terms of that, one of the first things we need to do is get all these colors into our system, all these different color codes, so we don't have to go back referring to this document sort of time and time again. But just before I continue, I also wanted to show you this application if you've got an Android device. So you can download this app for free, and it'll show you the various colors and what they look like on your device. Now all these links, they'll be on this episode, on this page. You'll see that there's a little button you can click to get access to all these different links, by the way, so you don't need to write them down. But that's just another way of looking at them. But the cool thing is someone has actually taken the time to write all these colors down in the various combinations and setting it up in a file, so we can basically just copy this entire file and paste it into our app. And that's actually what we're going to do. So I'm just going to copy that entire document, the entire file with all the color combinations. And again, that's the link at the top, or refer to the notes section. We're going to go back to Android Studio, and we're going to go into the resource folder, into the values. I'm going to create a new file, values resource file. I'm going to call this all colors. This won't just be the colors that we're using per app. This is actually literally all colors. Allcolors.xml. And I'm just going to select the contents and paste that in there. So we've now got all the various combinations. And MD stands for material design, underscore, then whatever the color is, underscore, then there's that code, the 50, the 100, the 200, and so on. So that'll come in very handy for our development. Okay, so moving on. The next thing, just briefly to talk about, is the app compatibility, because that's the next thing we're going to be doing now. We're going to be adding this the compatibility of material design, so it'll not only work well on Lollipop devices, but on pre-Lollipop, version KitKat, version 4.4 KitKat, and prior to that, Jelly Bean and other versions. We want our apps to work on those as well. So we're going to be following the guidelines of App Compat v21 and actually get those working, so that what we're doing with our Lollipop design still looks really good on older Android devices. One of the things is it's an app compatibility sort of layer, so you won't get 100% of the functionality. For example, you won't get some of the elevations of the graphics, you won't get some of the styles and the animations, but the overall look and feel will look really good. And that's what this library is all about. Just scrolling down a little bit here, you see that they're talking about theming and so forth. And we're going to be creating a theme for our app that will work both, again, for current versions of Android and old versions. And we're going to be using this toolbar widget to support that. And we're going to make sure that we use the widget toolbar from the app compatibility layer, so that we've got full access to that on our current devices and also on our old devices. Okay, so how does this apply to an Android app? Well, essentially, there is a styles.xml file. And in this styles.xml file, this is where you customize your theme. This is where you can sort of say the color combinations you want, the effects, the font sizes, all those types of things. How everything is going to look is all done within this sort of styles file. Well, when I say it's all done, this is the generic file. There's also a subfolder called values-v21. V21 is the API level, so that's Lollipop. So your Lollipop specific styles commands will be in that file, but the styles, the general file in the general values folder is for everything. But what we're going to be doing, because we're using that app compat layer, we're going to make sure that we pretty well put everything, 95+% of all our styles in that file, so that there's very minimal sort of Android only functionality we need to add, because we want to minimize that as much as possible to make it easy for us in terms of compatibility, so that we're not sort of having to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so the style name is where we start. Now, just in case you're wondering how does Android know where this file is, well, if we go to our Android manifest.xml, Android theme equals @style app theme. So it's actually looking for a theme in the style file name called app theme. And it's also smart enough to look in the values v21 folder if you're running an Android device. That's running Android Lollipop, I should say. Now, just out of interest, if you did want to specifically support other versions or other APIs, you could do that if you wanted to. But for most things, you don't really need to do that. Really, all we need to do is specify the current one for Android Lollipop, then just a general one, which will be for our sort of catch-all for sort of all other versions that we're looking to support. So that's what it looks for anyway. So it's looking for that in the style.xml file, and it's looking for sort of like an identifier, if you will, called app theme. And just going back to the style sheet again, style name equals app theme, and that's what it's looking for. So that's what it's finding. And at the moment, it's actually our application is using this as a style sheet. So this isn't supporting a toolbar. This is the old action bar that we're going to do away with when we actually update this theme. Okay, so let's move into modifying that theme. So what we need to do now is set up the colors that we're going to use for our application. So I'm going to create a new file in the values folder, new values resource file. This one I'm going to call colors.xml. Now this is going to contain our app-specific colors. If you recall that the all colors is all the colors in the application. And by the way, it's pretty neat, but you can see what Android Studio does for you automatically here. On the left-hand side, it actually gives you the shade of color that's going to be that's associated with that hex code. So that is incredibly handy, as you'll find later as you're working through, just to make sure that the color you think you're working on is actually the right color. So we're going to be referring to that. So what we need to do is create a few different values in this colors.xml file, and we're going to be referring to that in our style sheet. And so what that means is we can come back to this colors.xml file, and in one place we can change a couple of entries, and our entire theme for the entire application is actually changed. Clean up this file and get started. So we're going to start off putting our first one in, and we're going to do some basic colors. We're going to type color, name equals Flickr, primary background color. So that's going to be our major background color that's used in a toolbar and other places. And the good thing about this is we can actually just type @color, and we can refer to those other colors in the all colors file. So we can say start with a MD_blue 500 for argument's sake. So I'll get rid of that, and you can see straight away, because it's not red anymore, it's found that code. So that's going to be our primary background color. That's the 500, which is the main color for the toolbar. And we're also going to do a secondary one. So I'll just copy this to make it quicker. And you can see to the left there, it's giving us the shade of the color, so we'll know straight away. And I'm going to do a 700 for this one. This will be sort of the status bar above the toolbar, and we'll call this secondary. And actually what I'll do is I'll type the word color for both of them as well, just so it's 100% clear. Okay, the next thing we want to do is that accent. And that's that sort of bright color that you saw underlining a few fields in the web document that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to call that Flickr color background accent. We're going to go for a nice pink with that one. So I'm going to type MD pink. We'll do a 500 for that one. Okay, then the last one we're going to use is a generic color for sort of our forms, not the toolbar, sort of the general sort of forms and other sort of, you know, what's behind a general view, if you will, the main parts of the page. I'm just going to call that one Flickr background color. Most of the time this won't show through because we'll usually have something there sort of covering it, like a recycler view or something like that. But I'm just going to use an MD grey, say like 600, just so it's sitting there, just so we can sort of see that it's working. Okay, then we need two more. We need a primary and a secondary color, text colors. This is obviously going to be the text that's on the screen. So I'm going to call this one Flickr primary text color. And we're going to go, our major color is going to be white, MD white. Now white hasn't got all the different ranges because white is obviously white. So there's just one, which is 1000. And we're going to go for a yellow for the secondary. And again, the good thing about it is you'll be able to experiment and change any of these colors here once, and they'll be reflected through the entire app. So we're going to go for a color, MD, and we'll go for a yellow 500. Okay, so they're the colors that our app is going to be using. Okay, so we're done with that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to tell the app that we're going to be using the app compatibility layer. So to do that, we need to go into our build.gradle file. And you saw this earlier when we added support for Recycler View and Picasso. We've now got another one we need to add, which is the app compat. So to do that, compile com.android.support app compat v7, and it's the v7 library which we saw in that video, in the web page I should say, 21.0.plus. And while we're here, whoops, single quote, I'm going to add card view, even though we don't need it for some time. We'll actually add the card view as well, and that's going to be where we sort of show the details of our photo on a separate page, as opposed to being in a recycler view. So it'll be card view -v7 21.0.plus. And again, what we can do to make sure that it's working, just do a sync now. And if there's any errors, it'll come back and tell us at this point. So essentially no errors is a good thing, and you can see down the bottom it's, you know, Gradle is building away. Okay, so that's now supported, which means we can use that app compatibility layer, which is good. Okay, so let's now go back to the style XML. This is the normal one, not the Android specific one. And I'm going to double click that to make a bit more space. And then we're going to we're going to change a few things here. Firstly, we're not going to be using the action bar. We're going to be using a toolbar. So we need to get rid of this and change this all together. We're going to make this theme.appcompat.light, and we're going to go .no action bar. And the reason that we say no action bar is we're replacing it with a toolbar. So we'll be replacing that in code. So we need to specifically say that our theme isn't going to be using the action bar at all. Okay, so we want to create a base now. So we're going to type style name equals, we'll call this one theme.base, and we're defining this, and we're going to say the parent to this equals app theme. So think of that sort of more or less like inheritance. So we're inheriting from this and we're extending it. So theme.base has got everything that's in app theme, and we're going to add some stuff over the top of that. So in theme.base, we're going to do a few things like our primary color. So we're going to type item name equals color primary. Now in this case, color primary, what we're now doing is we're setting the actual values that the app will use for colors to the colors that we've set up in our colors.xml file. So you know, essentially whenever it's drawing something, in this case the color primary refers to the background color, the default background color. This is where it goes to look for this sort of property called color primary, and that should just be color primary, not Android color primary. This is where it goes to look for that. So we're going to type in there, and you might be able to guess what we're going to type in there. We're going to type at color Flickr primary background color. So we're now sort of saying that's going to be our primary background color. So it'll go there, when it needs to know what the color is, and it'll look for that. And because it's not in red, we know that it's found it. It'll look in here and go, oh, okay, you're using the blue 500, which of course, again, goes back blue 500, MD underscore blue 500. MD underscore blue 500. So eventually it knows, okay, this is the hex code I'm going to be using for that. So that's sort of how that works. Okay, so obviously we've got a primary, but we want another one. We want our sort of secondary color, or what Android refer to as the dark. So we call this color primary dark. And that's going to be our secondary. Nothing in red, so we know that things are working okay. Now we want to know our color accent, and that's that little bit of vivid pink that you saw underlining a field when we brought up the color styles command, or page I should say, earlier. So that one's going to be called color accent. At color, Flickr, color, background accent. Like so. Okay, a few other things we want to do. We want to tell the app that we're not going to be using a Windows action bar. So we're going to type window action bar, false. And we want to set also item name equals, whoops, that should be, it is important whether to include or not include these commands. So Android, window, no title, true. In other words, we don't want to show a title. And we've got a couple more here. We're going to add a Windows background. This is going to be the default background color. So it's item name equals Android window background. And that's going to be our at color Flickr background. Oops, background color. Okay, that will do for now, because the text commands we're going to style separately. The last thing we want to do is we want to put style. I'm going to end this video now because it's getting on a little bit. I'll call this one theme.flickr parent equals theme.base. So that's going to be our basic theme. So this is the starting point. You can see theme.flickr inherits from theme.base, which inherits from app theme. So you can sort of see how it jumps to all of them. So what we now need to do is copy that, and that's going to go back into our Android manifest file, changing it there, changing app theme. We're going to delete out app theme, theme.flickr. All right, I'm going to end this video here, and we'll continue on with the next video.